Hey everyone, it is time for the second day of reveals for the Delve into Deep Home mini set. And yeah, with today we are going to be seeing Priest Druid, Druid Warlock, and Warlock Mage cards. So let's jump into our first one here, which is those Priest Druid cards. First we have Glowstone Gyreworm. It's a 4-mana 4/4 elemental with lifesteal, quick draw, deal 5 damage, but if you forge it, change that quick draw to battle cry. I love this. Oh my gosh, I love this card. This card probably will make me want to play Priest. I love elementals. The lifesteal is awesome. The quick draw of dealing 5 damage and getting that life at the same time, fantastic for Priest. It's got a decent body, and the being able to forge it if it's stuck in your hand and you're not going to be able to get the quick draw effect. Like, you can forge this on turn 2 if it's already in your hand, and then on 4 it's a battle cry and you get to play it whenever you want then and still get that effect. Really awesome card. I really like that one. The next one is Pendant of Earth. It's a 3-mana nature spell. It is both Priest and Druid, and it says discover a minion from your deck. Gain armor equal to its cost. Yeah, this is going to be kind of gross in both of those classes. Both classes gaining armor. Maybe that's a little bit more effective for Druid. Druid can utilize the armor a little bit more than Priest can. Priest usually has synergies with like healing or overheal, things like that. So the armor isn't quite as effective, but still for more control style priests or priest decks that are going to have larger minions, this is still going to be a fantastic tool. And even if Priest just wants to discover it, still great. The last one here is Shattered Reflections. It's a 5-mana spell for Priest and Druid. Choose a minion, add a copy to your hand, deck, and battlefield. Again, yeah, wow, I like all 3 of these cards. Shattered Reflections here, choose a minion. Not just friendly, not enemy, either one. So you can choose an enemy minion and then get to add a copy for yourself. You can choose one of your own things. It is slightly costly at the 5, but I mean, you're getting a copy immediately onto the battlefield and you're getting one in your hand. So if there are things like colossals, you'll immediately get any of those colossal like appendages. If it's a Titan, you're going to get one to your hand and in your deck, so you can play that later, but you'll get a copy onto the board. So if there's any of those Titan abilities left, you can use that immediately. If this is a battle cry, the one that you get in your hand, you can play. There's just so many uses for this. It's absolutely amazing. I think this is a fantastic tool. I can see this probably being used a little bit more in Priest than Druid, but there's certainly going to be synergies where Druid uses this. I mean, absolutely. It's going to be pretty gross, especially if you have a way to like discount these. Nature spells costing cheaper for the Pendant. Being able to like Thaddeus and make these things cost less. There's so many different synergies. I think these are going to be very good. Next up, we have the Druid Warlock cards here. So we have Gloomstone Guardian. It's a 4-mana 6/8 elemental for Druid and Warlock. Taunt and choose one. Discard 2 cards or destroy one of your mana crystals. And if you forge it, you do neither. So if you forge it, it's just a 4-mana. I mean, I guess technically you could say 6-mana, 6/8 with taunt. So okay. Yeah. It is an elemental, so for Warlock, there's not going to be any of that like undead or demon type synergies to like pull it out of your hand or out of your deck. But still, even if you discard 2 or destroy one of your mana crystals, a 4-cost large body taunt like this versus aggro decks especially, I think is pretty nice for some of these potential decks. And these cards are going to be in standard for, the next like 2 years. It's not bad. I don't know if it's placed in anything currently in the meta, or if there is ways to utilize this maybe a little bit more, honestly, in the Warlock, putting this in a discard and actually wanting to discard 2 cards, and getting effects with cards that you discard seems like a place it might fit. The next one is Trogg Gemtosser. I love that name. It's a 3 mana, 3/2, also Druid and Warlock card. With Finale, deal 1 damage to a random enemy for each of your mana crystals. So this does have to be the Finale effect for you to get this. But if you play this mid or later game as a Finale, you know, you're getting 5, 6, or up to 10 mana crystals as damage to enemies. So if they don't have any minions on board, it's going to hit their face. If they only have 1, you know, this is kind of like a little bit of a smaller effect of like Astalor. Of course, it's going to be based on your mana crystals, but because it's based on your mana crystals, this is actually kind of interesting because it does actually have a payoff for playing it later in the game, even though it only costs 3. So this is a cool tool that Druid or Warlock could use, like maybe earlier in the game. Even like on curve, it would still deal 3. So against a board of smaller things or things that have 1 health, sure. Okay. Yeah. I don't know. I think this is a really interesting tool. I think right now it feels like it probably goes into Warlock a little bit better than Druid, but we'll see what kind of Druid decks come around in, you know, the next multiple expansions. And then we have the Druid only card, Crystal Cluster. 6 mana, gain 3 empty mana crystals. Any that can't fit, summon a 3/7 elemental with taunt. And that 3/7 elemental with taunt there, a Crystal Crusher, which does count as a 5-cost minion. So if you end up, you know, it gets put back in your hand or something, evolve effects, you know, all of those kind of random things that can happen. But this is honestly a really good ramp card for Druid that has a payoff if you can't actually get the ramp. Some of the ramp cards feel kind of bad. It does cost more, right? It's 6. Some of the other ramp cards that we're kind of used to seeing that ideally you want in the game are like the Whelp, that's 2 mana if you're holding a dragon. You have the 3 mana, 4 mana. There's even 5 mana with Nourish. So this is kind of on the higher end of the ramp, but there actually is a huge payoff if you can't get the ramp out of it. You get the bodies instead. So this seems like a really solid card. Again, maybe this doesn't go into one of the current Druid decks. I mean, if you're waiting until you get the taunt bodies and you're against a more aggressive deck or mid-range deck, that's probably a bit too slow, unless you did get to actually play other ramp cards before this, and then maybe you're at 8 or 9 and you can play this and get at least 1 taunt, sure. But it also is not a nature spell, it's just a regular spell, so there's no like synergies with Topior or discounting nature spells or anything like that. So this is going to be a really interesting one that I think at some point in Druid, we will see this being utilized in meta decks. And there might actually be some decisions on when players want to use this. If they will use it just for the 3 empty mana crystals because they need the ramp, or if they will actually hold it purposely to get the bodies. So it's a really interesting card, and I think it's really cool. I'm not sure it's going to be used like right now in our current meta, but it's cool. And now we get into the last few cards here, the Warlock and then Warlock Mage. So the Warlock only card here, Elementium Geode, 2 mana, 2/1 elemental with a battle cry and death rattle. Draw a card, deal 2 damage to your hero. Okay, so you're essentially getting a body with your hero power as Warlock, which is great. That's just an upside. You get it as a battle cry and a death rattle, so you get the effect immediately when you play it, But again, this has some synergies with things that are already in Warlock. The harp that can, take damage and then actually turn it into healing. The demon that makes your hero immune on your turn. There's a lot of different synergies here. So, but honestly, even just instead of just hero powering, you basically still get to hero power and you get a body on the board on turn 2. That's kind of huge for Warlock. This seems fantastic. Not the greatest body size, but it's still something. So I think this is solid. Again, not like super flashy style card, but it seems great. The first Warlock Mage dual class card we have is Chaos Creation. It's a 6 mana Fel spell. Deal 6 damage, summon a random 6 cost minion, destroy the bottom 6 cards of your deck. Okay, that definitely feels a lot more like Warlock than it does Mage. But okay, if Mage still wants to be able to deal 6 damage and get a random body, sure. Maybe if this is slotted into something or discovered in a style of deck that maybe like is Rainbow Mage or the Sif Mage, and you're looking for that, you probably don't want to play this until you have some of those key cards like Sif. But if you already do, or if it's maybe a slower matchup, it's already gone to Fatigue, okay, destroy the bottom 6 cards of your deck. Well, you don't have any cards left, so that's not even a downside. I definitely can see some uses for this. I don't feel like it necessarily immediately gets slotted in, maybe more in Warlock right now. This can now also, these spells can be generated off of random effects for spells being played, things like Yogg-Saron. So I'm sure we'll see it pop up somewhere. And the last one is also a Warlock Mage dual class card, SoulFreeze. It's a 1 mana frost spell. Freeze a minion and its neighbors. Deal damage to your hero equal to the number frozen. Wow. 1 mana to be able to freeze up to 3 minions. And I'm going to say like quote unquote downside is taking up to 3 damage. Okay. That seems fine. That seems fantastic. Immediately think like Rainbow Mage would absolutely love having this. 1 mana frost spell. It works with your synergies already. It's cheap. You can play it easily. You're building up armor and stuff in most of those games anyways. So like, okay, even if you freeze 3 things, y'all take 3 damage now, but I'm potentially saving myself a lot of damage from the attack of those minions that I'm freezing. And there's synergies with other things like if a minion's already frozen, you destroy it or you deal damage, or just this card seems so good. I really like this card. Out of these 3, this one might be my favorite, then probably the Geode second. But SoulFreeze seems really good. And honestly, in Warlock too, this is really interesting. I don't think we've seen any like freeze effects in Warlock, so this is kind of cool. And again, in Warlock, sometimes you want to be taking damage and then you're just going to heal it up anyways. Or again, as I mentioned with the Geode, you might have the Felstring Harp, or you might have some other synergy that you want to take damage. And it's like, okay, great. In the past, I know it's in Wild, but there was the quest line to be dealing damage to yourself anyways. And it's like, sure. So there's definitely a lot of potential for this SoulFreeze card. And being able to discover something like this in Mage especially is going to be absolutely fantastic. Also, something like this in Rogue, like discovering these in some other classes, going to be pretty gross. But I really like that one. Okay, well, that is some really interesting stuff. I personally am really excited for these next ones, the Hunter and then the Paladin stuff. Really excited for that. Also, I want to see what the Elemental stuff is like for Shaman. So I'm really excited for the other 2 days of reveals. But what did you think of these ones today? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for checking this out. And if you haven't already, check out the day 1 reveals that I did here or some of my other Hearthstone videos. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.